So while we're waiting for him, though, I've had the privilege of talking with both of you. Kathy is our town supervisor, and she's joining us here. And Kathy, I'll let you kind of say hi.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. For those of you who haven't met me, I live off of Park Meadow Lane, off of Middle Cheshire. Been town supervisor for the past 2 years, and I have one more year in my term. And I'm looking forward to talking with you guys, and hope we can address your concerns. And I hope if you have any questions for me, I'm always here either way. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What I'll do is, as soon as Dick connects here, assuming he should be able to connect here in just a second, I'll share my screen and we can look at an encore version of this so that we can actually look at the property and we can kind of talk through some different things and kind of look at some different stuff here. So. Just resend him this link just in case. There he is.
You're all set.
Welcome.
Hi.
I made it.
You made it.
Is the meeting over?
Yep.
Yeah, we're all
waited.
done.
We waited for you. We heard you were bringing the popcorn and the refreshments.
I got it.
Dick, I think you know Kathy, right? We just did some introductions.
Hi, Kathy.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
All right. So why don't I just kind of give kind of like a 10,000 foot overview kind of on how we got to this point of where we're at, and then we can kind of have a dialogue, question and answer. And you're going to hear me use the word explore a lot because that's exactly the phase that we're in. We're not trying to ram this down anybody's throat or anything at all like that. We're exploring this opportunity that has kind of presented itself. Dating all the way back to 2003, the residents of the town of Canandaigua during a number of different surveys have consistently requested that the town board look at acquiring additional lakefront for public access to Canandaigua Lake. And that was consistent in the 2003 comprehensive plan the surveys that were done for that, the 2011 update, the 2017 update, and then the 2020. It's been a consistent theme even this year. It scored very high. The residents continue to ask for additional access to Canandaigua Lake. As you probably know, the town of Canandaigua operates 2 beaches already in the town of Canandaigua, the Butler Road Schoolhouse Beach at the corner of Butler Road and County Road 16, and then obviously with Ononda. This parcel kind of came up, obviously, the Kellogg, Mr. Kellogg has created, I'm sure you're aware, this association, Silver Springs Association, I believe is the name of the association. And it's my understanding that each of the 4 children own a 25% share in that association, and the 4 children are the decision makers regarding the property and the future of the property. From what I also understand in looking at all of this, that the children have decided that they are going to sell the property. And they listed it actually with Mitchell Pearson Realty. I don't know if you've seen any of this documentation that the Tripp Pearson specifically had put out a variety of these types of things. The information is also available through Zillow and through the website on the information on the property. It's the 4 children have from having conversations now for several weeks, the 4 children have a variety of different interest in what they would like to see done with this property, but it's clear that they're unanimous that they want to transition the property to someone else. They would love to see it preserved in its entirety, but they also have been entertaining and speaking to developers who would be interested in construction of at least 3 homes, if not 4 homes, and subdividing the property up. And they've been very upfront with, and the realtor has told me that the developers that look at it, the majority of them have talked about just leveling the entire parcel and then constructing 3 or 4 large homes with subdivision on it. So that's kind of the 10,000 foot version of kind of how we got here. So then this opportunity kind of came up, and you know, it was said, you know, well, what about the town? Would the town ever consider this piece? Let's at least explore it. Let's at least have the conversation, not saying that we're jumping into anything, but let's at least explore the idea. And as we started having conversations with the family about what it might look like if they were to sell the parcel to the town, and could we even entertain, you know, even a concept of what some sort of a transaction might look like? Would they be willing to work with the town, because we have processes that we would have to go through, as opposed to them just selling it to a developer who'd be able to write a check maybe and then come in and do a variety of other things. And we kind of finally got to the point after a lot of conversation that yes, they would at least consider working with the town to maybe do something that would entail the preservation of the piece largely intact the way it is now. So that's kind of how we got to this point. And then looking at the individual parcel, and as we started looking at this and we knew that, okay, the family was interested in maybe working with the town, that's when I came out and knocked on your doors and said, hey, we need to start conversations with you too, because I know if I lived in any one of your houses, I would want to be part of the conversation, obviously. So that's the real big version and how we got to where we're at. Let me share my screen with you so that we can look together at the Encore. Can everybody see the map here of the parcel? I'll just zoom out for a quick second here. So you should be able to see all 3 of your homes here, obviously, just to the north of the parcel. One of the interesting things, and obviously this makes it very enjoyable for you also owning these properties here, is the shelf that's on the lake here. Obviously with a nice area where you can really use the area before it drops off. Down at Ononda Park, it's not too far out past the fishing pier where actually it drops off. And so there's a nice shelf here where people could use the area of the water. So coming back here to County Road 16, let me just kind of zoom in here for a quick second. One of the things that we're very aware of is that Wanda Policini's driveway cuts across the top portion of the piece right here. She has an easement to access her property down that way, right across there. And there is a little parking area, as you all well know, right here. Tichenor Point, obviously coming in, grassy area. You know, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. The tennis court, and then the existing buildings that are all there, the shed, the stream. You all know that very well, in the boathouse. In terms of, you know, the town, so that's where we really wanted to have some conversations with you, exploring this. If we were to move forward this, what would this look like? One of the things I was really wondering is if you would be interested in closing this driveway off. And I think I've heard from all three of you that no, you'd rather keep it open, which is fine. We can certainly, you know, and again, I'm going to hypothetically, for this conversation, there's nothing has been determined, but I'm just hypothetically saying, okay, if this was a town park, here's some things we could think about and talk about just to have conversation. But I'm not trying to imply or insinuate that this is a done deal by any means.
And
So
Doug, if I could I interrupt
sure,
you
yep.
1 second? I'm sorry. So that's kind of why I'm here. I know sometimes when you're dealing with some, you know, one portion of the town government, you might wonder what the town board is actually thinking. And we're in the thinking stages. I love this property. I wish I could buy it and keep it just as it is. You know, but I can't. I love history. I love the history of this area. We walked that property yesterday, and I was in awe of how beautiful the nostalgia of the buildings. My grandfather owned property on a small lake in Connecticut, and it was torn down to build gigantic mansions, and I've always felt that loss. And so that's where I'm coming from. So but I also, you know, I have no preconceived notions. I want, you know, I understand that obviously this is important to you if we're gonna have a public park next to you. So while Doug's talking about nuts and bolts, I'm here to sort of represent what I've heard from everyone on the town board is we all have a love for this property and would like to see it preserved. And if possible, for many people to enjoy it. So with that, Doug.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Well, and I'm glad, you know, Kathy, you know, we've looked at the history here too. We know that there is documents relative to the Seneca Nation of Indians. Obviously, being specifically on this property, there's a unique opportunity there. We know the history before the Kellogg's and the family that had it before that. We know the connection with the RT. We understand a lot of the unique aspects of the property that could be showcased and kind of preserved and kind of honor the past of what this parcel was for the greater Canandaigua community, where the town is in a unique position to do that, obviously, and versus a developer, you know. So, you know, that's just kind of how we're able to come about that. In terms of the driveway, I know traffic is certainly, and it would be for me also if I lived in one of your homes, traffic, right? So we want to, if we were to move forward with this again, we'd want to make sure that we're constructing something for traffic so that traffic was basically using this entrance here, the southernmost point of Tichenor Drive. Again, if I was you, I certainly would not want traffic coming past my house, you know, and we understand that. We could certainly figure out some things, whether it's an entrance for a parking area, whether it's, you know, we do have staff that we always have at our parks, for instance, like Ononda, we have park rangers, we have gate attendants, you know, those are the types of things we could certainly talk about. We could certainly talk about vegetative buffering. The driveway itself, we can certainly entertain and have conversations regarding the maintenance. I know the light poles don't necessarily work all the time. Those are the types of things that we have staff that handles those types of things regularly. Obviously, construction of roads, lights, you know, those are all things where that may be some benefits that we might be able to help provide, especially with it being on this parcel if this were to be acquired by the town. Obviously, and just kind of just do a real quick overview, and then we can start talking about some specifics. The boathouse is existing, not proposing. I really wouldn't see us doing anything really with that. The only thing that I would say, and obviously we'd have to figure it out, and it would be a long way down the road. I know that the fire department has routinely asked me about other locations to launch in an emergency situation. That might be something there to have a conversation, but not for any type of regular motorized access. We don't allow motorized access at our parks. So we allow you know, and I actually wrote it right on here, non-motorized launch like kayaks, canoes, those types of things. The cove here, that we'd have to do the requirements that we'd have to go through with the New York State Department of Health. Obviously, this would make probably a very nice swimming area here. The rest of the property, really, I wouldn't really see us doing, some sort of parking back in this area with something here to help protect the residents, and then obviously protect some sort of additional buffering here, whether it's vegetative or whatever the case. But the rest of the property, just for being able to enjoy it for what it is, not a lot of construction of buildings or anything at all like that. Maybe down the road, we might have conversations about some sort of a pavilion, small pavilion or something, things like that. But really just to enjoy the beauty for what it is. I did float the idea by a couple of the board members about maybe trying to preserve this existing cabin as possibly a museum, turn of the century kind of cabin, lake frontage, steamboat landing cottage along the lake, and maybe trying to preserve the history and tell the story. I would certainly, if we were to move forward with this, like to have conversations maybe with the Seneca Nation about maybe there's something that we can do there. We also work closely with the Ontario County Historical Society, and the family is willing, if the town is the purchaser, the family is willing to leave for the town the majority of all of the artifacts and all of the history of the community that's actually in those buildings that they wouldn't otherwise do for a developer. So there are a lot of neat things in those existing cabins, and then the same for this cabin here. Obviously, you all know, I'm sure you've all been out on the point here. The point has incredible views north and south of the lake. It's just a stunning opportunity to be able to stand there and see the lake in that capacity. So with that, let's kind of talk about your comments, thoughts, questions, concerns, all those types of things. That's why we just wanted to have some conversations with you all.
Hey, Doug, it's Jeff. And thanks to you and Kathy for holding the meeting. We appreciate it. Just as far as some logistics go, I know you had mentioned to me earlier that this would be a dawn to dusk park.
All of our parks are dawn to dusk, yes. So we do not, once dusk sets, and that's actually in town law for all of our parks, that our parks actually close at sunset.
Okay, so you wouldn't be using the lights on the tennis courts or anything like that?
No.
Yeah, okay. Also, what about, do you envision this to be a dog park or dog friendly park, or?
That's a good question that we really have not talked about. So we do not allow that at Onondaga. We do not allow dogs on the lakeside portion. And we do not allow that at Butler, either one of our beaches. And I think because if this was a swim area, I really do think we would have to limit and really have a conversation about that. That's a great question. It's certainly something, if that's what you all would like to see us do, we could certainly pursue that. The only
I think what I'm saying is I'd rather it not be.
Right.
Not have dogs allowed.
No, I understood that. That's okay. Definitely something that we could look to actually write into law. The only thing is, I just want to caution you on that. We do have at Onondaga, again, there's a rule, no dogs on the lakeside portion. Service dogs are exempt from that.
Yeah. Of course.
So occasionally you do get service dogs that come out.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
And are you thinking that you would have a fence of some sort what do you do with, and how, is this a problem at other parks with people coming late at night and hanging out?
I'm just going to make a note, no dogs. Because honestly, truly, that's one of the things, that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I had not even thought about that, to be honest. So that was in terms of at night or in fencing. So we do have, as I'm sure a lot of you know, at Onondaga, on the north side of Onondaga is the Sands residence. And there is a fence that's kind of more of a rustic style looking fence that blends in with the parks as well, the park as well as the spruce trees that are there. We could certainly look to do something like that. I would say especially kind of in this area maybe, as well as some additional vegetative. My guess is, and I wanted to hear from you all, but I would think you would probably want this to stay relatively open like you have it, just to enjoy the meadow, I would think. But that's, we could even look at like a split rail fence or something like this if you'd prefer to delineate the boundary. But I would think that you would probably want that more open than a 6-foot tall wooden fence type thing.
Yeah, you're
And-
probably right. Just some kind of demarcation, like a split rail or something.
Mhm.
And I just want to say, we have no preconceived notions at
Yep.
this point. We want it to look as beautiful as possible, obviously, for the most people. And obviously, we would speak to the Sands, things that work, don't work for them down there, because we don't want to be bad neighbors.
Sure.
And to answer your question about people coming in at night, I don't know that, if a gate or something, I'm surprised. We've been fortunate that people don't just drive down there. Knowing, I mean, when I'm on the lake, you see Tichenor Point and how beautiful it is. I'm surprised people haven't just wandered down there. Has that been your experience at all, or?
No, there's usually, I mean, there's typically people living there and here, so we don't get a lot of that coming down. But, after it becomes a park, we were just kind of wondering what we could do with the town to maybe ensure that, people didn't come in there after hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important. Ononda's a little different because there are cabins there, so
Yeah.
there are people there at night.
Right.
But definitely, we obviously don't want people on that property destroying it either when there's no one there. So,
True.
so whatever options are available to keep it the way it is, we definitely would look into.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Ling. I just want to make a comment about that. The north from us, there's a strip where Don Netzker owned, and there are several houses across the street has a right of way. And at night, there are many young adults who quote unquote party in that area. So there's no way that you can rule out or prohibit evening parties in that area, especially the large area that is uninhabited. That's my concern about it, that reality, they do have picnic tables in there and so on, and they stay late and very loud. So that has to be considered. The other thing is also the parking space that you will provide for those guests, either it's 10 cars or 20 cars, you have to consider that the more people may park on the street, on both sides of the street, and that will probably create problem. Number 3, by leaving the boathouse intact, are you planning in the future to have a sheriff there where they can launch their sheriff boat like the one you have in Onondaga? Number 4, are you going to provide restrooms for those people? And that will create also needing a sewer and a pump. The pump will go up into my property. So things have to be considered about that. Number 5, I'm sure that with the swimming area, you will need lifeguard and so on. And that should be considered too.
Yes, to all of them. I mean, those are, yes, those. So, the thing is, we have, let me just I was writing the list down as you were kind of talking there. So the night activity, we do experience that in some of our parks, and that is something that we work very hard at trying to prohibit, but I'm not going to promise you that it won't ever happen. Exactly what you said. Every once in a while, somebody does something that they're not supposed to do. We do put things like cameras in a lot of our parks to help monitor. I can tell you that all of our parks are on the Ontario County Sheriff's list, where they go around and they help to keep an eye on things for us. We also have our code enforcement officers that do that, and we have our park staff that do that. And our park staff is routinely going back and forth between Ononda Park and Butler Road Beach, Schoolhouse Beach Park. They have to do things quite regularly, daily, 7 days a week, Monday, every single day, 7 days a week. They're going back and forth between those two parks. So we're regularly in this area. Really, in terms of staffing, we would be monitoring this park just like all of our other parks. In terms of parking, I think that's a couple of things. I wouldn't see a huge parking lot. I think I would see a smaller type parking lot. Hopefully we would not have to There is an open area here. There's trees obviously here. What I would hope is that we could really have limited impact on the trees and put some sort of a nice parking lot. Maybe you take advantage a little bit of this meadow here, leaving the existing shrubbery buffer, vegetative buffer that's here, and then building that up, so to speak. It is also something that the town board could consider is no parking along the road. We have that actually at Ononda. We do not allow parking on the road at Ononda, and that is certainly another legislative action the town board should consider if this actually does become a town park. And then what we have happen is if people start parking along the road there, then we ask the sheriff's department to come and ticket those vehicles, and we post signs that there's no parking. So that's definitely something that we could entertain there. In terms of the sheriff's boat, it's too premature. I mean, like I said, the fire department had asked about emergency launching. I don't know. The boat house at Ononda is a very nice boathouse that allows them to bring the boat actually indoors. It is all set up for the boat to actually come in. I don't know that, I definitely wouldn't see that in the near term at this, because it's not really set up for that. This is more of a dry storage. So maybe there's some sort of a dry storage, but we'd have to talk about that. Lifeguards, I just want to touch on, yes, we would have to hire lifeguards. We currently employ approximately 17 lifeguards during the summer now. I would think for this area, if we were to make this a swim area, we'd probably have to add an additional 10, as well as our park rangers and our park recreation staff. We would fully support it through all the requirements. We have senior lifeguards. They all go through the training. That's something that we do with our other 2 beaches that we already operate. And then in terms of restrooms, yes, we would absolutely have to offer restrooms on the property. So we would have to really engineer that and explore whatever we would need to do associated with that. So, and I know that, I think there's actually, and it's a interesting little carve out here. I think this is where the pump station is, right, on your property?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah.
So we'll have to coordinate all of that, but yes, we would absolutely have to offer a restroom at the facility.
Ya, tapi kalau overflow, kita yang kena.
And if I could, I'd just jump in for a second. So the property that you were talking about where the kids hang out and party, are those people that own that property, or are they trespassing on that property, if you know?
They live across the street. They have a right of way
Mm.
into that property. And
So, I mean, that would be a difference in that the town would own this property, and if someone were on that property after hours, it would be, something that they could get arrested for trespass. So there's at least that remedy. I'm not going to say they're not going to do it. Kids will be kids. They'll sneak on. But that is a separate remedy that you might have that you wouldn't have on private property. And as far as the sewers, realize that if this becomes a development, you're going to have a lot more in the way of, build up and sewers than you would if it were just simply restrooms for a park. So that's something to consider as well. All right.
how do you enforce that dusk to dawn? Is there a guard there, or what do you do?
So we do enforce that. So we routinely monitor our parks. We have park staff that checks on that, and we also use cameras. So that, and we also use the police also to actually come to our parks. So when there are people in the parks, we're usually able to identify who they are, either from the cameras with catching the vehicles and the license plate numbers, or staff is catching them, or we're able to get imagery from the technology that we have with the cameras. So that's something that we do take very seriously. And we're trying to be, we would obviously, we'd want to be a good neighbor. Kathy said that earlier, but we absolutely, if this becomes a town park, we want you to love living next to a town park. We want to be a good neighbor. We want you to be able to enjoy it. And obviously we would work very hard at making that a reality. So, we have a staff that takes a lot of pride in our parks. We do our maintenance. We do contracts for staffing. We have arborists as part of our tree committees. We have our environmental conservation board. We take natural resource protection extremely seriously, and that includes in all of our parks.
Hey, Doug,
Doug, I've got some concerns about the tennis court.
Mhm.
When that was allowed, Paul actually built it when he didn't own the land. And then when the land was behind, the area on the west side of the driveway became common ground and we started paying taxes on it. It wasn't a park anymore. Some boundaries were drawn, which are on the map. And there's a triangular piece that was really intended to go with the Gleason property, but was carved out in order to accommodate the tennis court. Now, the nice thing about the tennis court is it never got used. Very seldom. Paul played a little bit. You know, we played once in a while. Gleason's, they played quite a lot, but, you know, 45 minutes in the afternoon. Pickleball has got a distinctive sound to it that I don't like. I don't know anyone who does like it other than the pickleball players. Now, I think that if you drew a line from right next to the mid tennis court, right to Jeff's property line, and carve that triangle out, it would eliminate the tennis court and would prevent a lot of future crowding. So I would like to see that done prior to a sale.
So let me just tell you, and Jeff and I had that conversation, and even before the conversation I had with Jeff, I had asked the representative of the family. I asked them again yesterday. I asked them, I said, and Kathy was standing right there when I asked them, I said, would you go back? Would there be any interest in doing something different with that tennis court? They called me about 2 hours ago and they said no. It's either it would be part of the sale, no matter who. They're not willing to cut that off and do something different with it. They're not willing to sell that separately. They're not willing to change the lot lines. The family has said, you purchase the entire property, including the tennis court. That's the property that they're selling.
Well, then maybe you'd give it back after you buy it.
So there's actually state law relating to parkland alienation that would prevent the town from doing that. So here's the thing. Let's talk about that for a second. So there's one thing. So it's one issue, right? Ownership of the tennis court and that. So let's set that aside for a second. Then there's the use of the tennis court. Here's what I would tell you. And yes, pickleball, definitely there's more people, it seems like lately, that have been playing pickleball. But I think as and Dick, especially as you know, we partnered with the city of Canandaigua to do a joint pickleball tennis court project at Sonnenberg Park. And really, we're seeing a lot more use of that park for this type of activity, pickleball and tennis, than we are in any of our other parks. Honestly, even Ononda is getting very limited use. Yes, people do use it from time to time, but there's not a ton of people that are going to play tennis, even in Ononda. People that are playing pickleball, they're competing in tournaments. That joint project that we did with the city of Canandaigua, that has 8 combination pickleball courts on it. So that's where a lot of that activity is taking place. That's not to say I can't promise you it would never, ever get used if it's there, but I don't think it's going to be a huge mega draw, to be honest with you, either.
Hey, Doug, how accurate that property line that you have drawn there, how accurate is that?
So they actually provided me with a survey.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just share that with you here. So this is their recent survey that they've done.
Okay. All right. The only reason I ask is that the yellow overlay line you had looks a little tighter than to the tennis courts than the survey line.
Yeah. And those are the GIS lines. They're a lot of times plus or minus 10 feet, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the surveyor says that you can see here that they've identified the iron pipes.
Okay.
The 3 points, 4 points.
That's the triangle I want to cut out.
Thanks, Dick. I appreciate it.
Well, you know, if you decide, Doug, on a price for the land, and then you say, but we don't want that triangle, it would satisfy everybody.
Right, but we don't have a way to do that, and
Oh,
especially
I
if
think
the
we
sellers.
can find a lawyer that'll show you a way to do it.
Well, no, it's parkland alienation is what it's called. There's a New York state law that prevents that from happening if the town were to acquire it. The only way for that to happen would be for the seller to sell that off separately or do some sort of a lot line adjustment. And what they've said is they're not willing to do that.
Well, they might if you've agreed on a price and are indifferent to that triangle. They could be very encouraged to do that. They're not bad people.
No, but I think it's a question of money for the family
Right.
as well.
Right.
Well, no, if you pay,
You know, so
if you pay
cut
the
out
same
of,
price with or without,
right, but so Doug can explain a little bit more,
Go
but
ahead.
we can't, so they're not willing to cut it off to begin with. We can't buy the whole property and then gift it to someone. I suppose at some point, if it looked like this was not something that we wanted to keep, and I'm not making, I mean, I understand your point, we could just make it a de facto type of property line by putting, you know, bushes or something there without cutting off. So, I mean, we could not sell it to you. Yesterday, they told us that that area where the tennis courts is probably worth $500,000 to them. So the only way that that it could be done is for them to subdivide it ahead of time and sell to you that piece of property, which they're not willing to do. So that's the bottom line. Or as I said, if it, I'm not, again, I have no preconceived notions and I can't, I'm not promising you anything, but another way to possibly do it is to, you know, in some way, make that so it's not an attractive thing, but, you know, we also have a responsibility as a town not to, you know, to use the property for the, you know, for the good of the whole town. So, but in terms of,
could you just take the tennis court out? Keep the property and just don't have a tennis court.
You know, that's something that we can definitely talk about. That would be an option. And I had made a note of that too. I think one of the things that we have to figure out, again, if we do move forward with this, what is the main point of what the park, what is the service? What are the services that the park is going to provide? If the main priority is swimming, maybe a kayak, non-motorized craft launch, the historical preservation, truthfully, maybe the tennis court doesn't fit. And maybe we do take the tennis court. Maybe that's green space meadow with some picnic tables or something or other like that. We can figure that out. That would really, I don't know of another option. And that's what Jeff and I were kind of brainstorming the other day. That might be an option to just take it out, seeing as how the family will not sell that separately.
I mean, even as a town park, that's a big chunk of the property. And as a practical matter, people just don't play tennis like they used to either. So that might be sort of wasted space. Now they do play pickleball, but you know, it's a trend like anything else. So that's something you'd have to consider. And I say that as I used to play tennis, so I know it's a dying sport, but you know, one tennis court, you know, is that really a good use of that space? So that's, but all options are open. But again, we're not, you know, promising.
Doug, also, and Kathy, when you talked about the parking area and the idea of not allowing parking on the road, I assume that would be kind of a way of limiting the number of people using the park at a time. What, I know it's early in the process, but what is your anticipated daily load?
So what we would want to do is actually work with our town engineer to actually lay out a kind of like a small parking area. You know, we do have a town code that requires, for instance, parking places be 10 by 20. We would have to provide so many parking places that are handicap accessible. And then we would see, okay, what do you have left? Honestly, I can't really begin to guess. I mean, the intent here would be to provide the access, yes, for the public. I want to say at Ononda, I want to say we have, give or take, on the lakeside 30 to 40. I could find out exactly for you, but I'm guessing probably around 30 or 40 parking places. I don't think you'd be looking at honestly that many here. This is this is definitely a beautiful site. We'd have to figure out again, have a way so that, for instance, at Ononda, we do not allow trailers on the lakeside for even people with kayaks and those sorts of things. But we do allow them to put them on the roof of their vehicle, or obviously if they have a pickup truck. You know, so I think we would need to have some conversation about those types of requirements also for this park, but then also providing enough space so that somebody who's launching a canoe or a kayak, whether it's a pickup, a vehicle, or whatever, that they can unload, you know, in one spot and then be able to carry that down, or use the little wheel carts that come with a lot of the kayaks and those sorts of things, to get down to the water and then have a space where they can leave their vehicles. So I don't have an exact number for you right now, because again, we're still kind of just, hey, what would this look like with, you know, exploring? But I don't think it would have the same number of visitors as what Ononda does.
Yep.
You
And
know,
I think, yeah, also on top of that, I mean, like I said before, it's a way of limiting that. So, you know, assuming that we do get into these discussions, I assume that we could have a discussion about how many people we limit that access to on a daily basis, or at least at a time, based on the number of spaces, versus trying to figure out how many spaces we need to accommodate whoever would ever want to go there. Kind of the other way is to limit the spaces so that not that many people will go there at a time.
And there's calculations that the engineers use. For instance, if we're going to have a swimming area that, I don't know, I'm just going to throw a number out, say it's 150 feet wide, then there's calculations on about how many people that would accommodate. And then you're able to kind of start to figure out, okay, how many vehicles would you have, and those sorts of things. So there's a variety of different ways that would all have to be taken into account. But one of the things that I can promise you that we would do is, we would, if we were to move forward with this, we would then mock up, okay, here's some ideas on what this would look like. And we would have public meetings, and we would want your input and feedback. And we'd even get into the detail of a site plan, just like if we were, you know, if you were building a house, and okay, here's how many parking places, and we would lay all that out. We'd have conversations long before we ever just go out and do something.
Yeah. So speaking of that, that's a good point, Tom. As far as the discussions, you know, like we're having now, kind of trying to get, you know, us all to a good spot going forward. If, when it starts getting more serious, if it does, do these kind of conversations suddenly switch over and become part of some kind of a public meeting, and that's the way that we negotiate with you?
Yes, essentially, yeah. So we would have, so let's just kind of talk about where we're at in the process right now. So we're exploring this purchase.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the big questions that's going to come up, you know, it's no secret, the family is asking $5.9 million for this property. I think, and basically they're not willing to take much less than $5.5 million. So that's about the price range, you know, as I've been talking to them, where we anticipate the price range is somewhere between 5.375 million and $7 million. So I think that's the envelope, right? That's, you're either 5.375 on the low side, you're as high as 7 million. That's the purchase price. It's somewhere in between there. And so one of the things for me, for this even to become a potential of a reality, is we've got to justify and we've got to determine what the purchase price is. So if the family says, let's just use a number here for a second. If the family says, we're not going to take anything less than 5.5 million, just to round it off. And the way we do this is we do two appraisals. They pay for one appraisal, we pay for one appraisal. We take the average of the two appraisals. Let's say their appraisal comes in at 6 million, our appraisal comes in at 4 million. The average of the two is 5 million, right? If we're at 5 million and they're saying that they won't take less than 5.5 million, there's no justifiable way for us to purchase the property at 5.5 million, because it's more than the market value. And we're not allowed to do that with taxpayer funds. Obviously, we have to protect that. So then the deal's dead. We can't do it. Versus somebody else, a developer or whoever the case, might be willing to come in and offer $7-8 million, but we don't have that ability. So for me, I think one of the questions right now is, we've got to get to a point where we take the first step so that we can order the appraisal to see if it's even realistic or not. I did find out today, I got share with you, I got a comparable that was provided to me by our town assessor. of a piece of property on Skinny Atlas Lake that sold on December the 3rd with 297 feet of lake frontage, a little bit similar, not exactly, but similar to this type of a setting. And it sold for 5.6 million. So maybe it might be realistic. It might be in that ballpark, but until we do the appraisals, I just have no way of knowing. So then once the appraisals have been determined and we've actually got a purchase price, that's when we can really start to get serious about, okay, this is a realistic thing for this to possibly move forward. And we can start having those public hearings and those additional conversations.
Okay, thanks.
And Doug, I have a question for you. So when they're doing the assessment and then determining the value, are they determining the value based on parkland or commercial land? So obviously this is a unique property. So I don't know about that Skinny Atlas. Is that being used for parkland or for development, or does it not matter? They're just saying either.
It doesn't matter. And that was one of the questions I asked as we looked at this and another parcel also. It's the full market value. So
Okay.
it's taking basically the highest and best use, whatever the highest and best use is, and the full value of what it would be.
Okay.
This is Sandy McGavern. Where would the money come from the town? Would there be state money involved in doing this, or how would it be paid for other than out of taxes?
Sure. So what we would do is obviously we always look at every single opportunity there is for revenue, whatever that is. And I think that this property has a very unique story to tell with a historical perspective that we would absolutely go after grant dollars and those sorts of things. But I think let's cut straight to the chase here at five, let's just use a round number, at $5.5 million, that's a lot of money. And so we would end up bonding the purchase, the acquisition of the land at a 30-year term. The thing that the town has going for it right now is we've gone through a lot of process, and Dick, I know you're familiar with this from your days with the city. We've gotten a pretty good municipal bond rating. We're a AA2 municipal bond rating is what we received. And we've been able to get some fantastic interest rates right now. We just recently did a bond anticipation note, and our interest rate that we received was 0.55%. So, this is a very unique time in history for us to do, honestly, a 30-year bond at a very, very low interest rate that otherwise may not come up with a not as great of an expense on the interest side of things for the taxpayers for the foreseeable future. But honestly, the acquisition, when you're talking about the debt service payment on $5.5 million over a 30-year period, you're probably talking, give or take, somewhere, I'm just going to use a round number here, but about a 10-cent increase on the tax rate. So our current tax rate is $1.03. You'd probably be looking town-wide of increase to the taxpayers of the town of Canandaigua, that tax rate going up somewhere in that neighborhood of $1.10 to $1.15, about a 10-cent increase.
But speaking of assessments,
Yes.
how Paul could have 400 feet of lakefront and have the lowest assessment is bewildering. But after you reassess it at 5 million, what happens to poor Jeff Trombley living next door to his assessment? I'm not worried about mine, but his, I'm worried.
I'm glad you asked that, because I asked the assessor that myself, because I was curious about that too. I said, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Let me pretend I'm Jeff and I'm living next door, and all of a sudden you spend $5 million for a piece of property. What happens to mine? Does mine all of a sudden become $5 million, and am I paying taxes on that? And what the assessor said to me is, no, because it's a different use. Where it would come into play is, let's hypothetically say that instead of the town, the developer buys it, builds a single family home, and all of a sudden that $5.5 million, they pay that $5.5 million and then tear all that stuff down and build that down. Then you're talking about a difference, because the use is single family residential. And so then you're comparing like things. And so then the opportunity exists for the assessed value to increase. But because you're comparing parkland versus single family residential, she said it has absolutely no bearing.
Well, luckily, Rob Sandy's marriage is still strong.
But you bring up a valid point, how are we going to pay for it? The people of Canandaigua may say no to this, but we want to bring it to them. Based upon everything, just even anecdotally, people have told me for years that, they miss being able to get out on the lake. They miss the things that were there. They want to be able to enjoy the lake. So, this may not fly. People may not want it. So
Yeah.
just letting you know.
And
Well,
that's
it is
why
a good
we're,
interest rate.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I said it's a whale of an interest rate for 30 years.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll see what, if we do move forward and we actually do the bond, we'll see exactly what we end up with, but they're incredible interest rates right now. I mean, honestly, it's kind of like this unique opportunity where you have a very unique piece of property come up at a time period where interest rates are extremely low. And it's like, okay, we at least need to have the conversation and we need to at least explore it.
Well, I'm disappointed that you can't carve out that triangle, but I'm encouraged that you can just get rid of the tennis court.
Well, Dick, you can build a driveway through there, so they have a separate entrance. So Jeff can have his own driveway straight to the West Lake Road from right in front of your house. And the
Yeah,
entrance from the park is separate. So
Yeah.
this way you don't have any guard needed.
well,
And you get rid of the tennis court, the value goes down. So that's,
Actually, I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to ask some similar questions about that road because I know a couple of you had asked me about that. And those are some of the same concerns I had when I first looked at the property. I guess I'm just asking questions. I can't promise you that it's even a possibility, but would there be any interest on the part of the three of you in the town taking over the maintenance of the full road? Just as a benefit because you would be living next to a town park? I'm just curious. And I'm not even 100% sure we can, but I'm curious if you would want us to explore that.
sure.
let me tell you, the sewer district used to snowplow the northern part of the driveway, and they stopped doing that. It's probably from the budget. So I'm not sure whether you can maintain that.
Well, we would have to
Them.
send we would have to send our park staff does all of the plowings for all of our parks. We have separate from the highway department, our park staff takes care of all the maintenance of the parks. So the park staff would definitely have to take care of this portion, but I think, and I'd have to just double check legally to make sure we could, but they use 1-ton trucks. They don't use the great big huge trucks that you see running up and down the road. They use
Right.
3/4 ton pickups and 1-ton pickups. They could get in here more easily than one of those big trucks could.
Doug, I think the only way you can do that is if it becomes dedicated town road.
Okay.
You can't plow, you can't maintain private roads. It's the same theory. It's the gifts clause. So when I was doing research on that for the transfer station and the gravel, that specific thing came up, towns maintaining private roads. They have to be dedicated town roads.
Well, and would you want to do that? I guess that would be the other question. Would you
That's
have
the
an
other
interest in
question.
dedicating that to the town?
Probably not.
Okay,
At least I wouldn't. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'd have to talk about it, but
sure.
I wouldn't really like the town taking control of it and
Okay.
deciding, whether it gets asphalted, whether it doesn't, all that kind of thing.
Right.
Well, and to the
I
other
think
point,
to give a little history, the reason the road got plowed in the years ago was the guy who checked the sewer every day had a plow on his truck. And so he just lowered the plow when he drove in and lowered it when he drove out, and it kept him from getting stuck, and we could use it. But
Sure.
on another discussion, Doug, Westlake Road continues to be ever more dangerous to pedestrian traffic.
Mhm.
And I think that, you said no parking right here. Try to walk by the marina some Saturday afternoon when the pickup trucks are racing by at 83.
Mhm. It's definitely something that we need to have some additional conversations about that area also, and with the marina. And I know it's come up in the past, but it's definitely something that we need to discuss more in that area too. For sure, it's absolutely. Let me ask you this: if the tennis court wasn't here, would you want to look at something where there's some sort of a loop or something back here, or maybe even some of the parking in this area? When I originally looked at it, I thought you all may prefer parking in this area so that it's basically not in your front yards.
I
But
agree.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're
I
right.
like that thinking.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And picnic tables where the tennis court are would give a lot more utilization to the public.
Mhm.
Maybe not too.
Yeah, but the problem is it's right in our front yard.
Yeah.
It is, right. Well, and that's where maybe we can talk and have conversations about vegetative things. We could plant some trees. We could plant a variety of different types of trees that maybe, we'd want to have conversations with you
Sure.
like that. There's no magic whatever. And we don't want to block your view. We want to be good neighbors, but also give you some privacy so we can
Right.
explore those types of things.
Sure. Yeah. I think we still have time. Like you said, there's some options. Ling's idea might be a good one of rerouting the road to push it near that border and use that as part of the buffer. So
Mhm.
I think there's some options.
For sure. For sure. Other
Well-
questions, comments, concerns?
No, Doug, thank you for bringing this to our attention in a timely fashion
Of
and
course.
for having this meeting. We appreciate it.
No, it's great to chat with you. And I know I can tell you, Kathy's certainly here and all the board members are very interested in talking with the residents about this. This is very much, we're exploring this. It's just, it's a unique parcel and a unique time, like I said, with the interest rates as low as they are. And it's just, okay, let's at least have a conversation about it.
Yeah. No,
And
we
it's a
appreciate
unique
all.
property. So, this property, like I always say, they're not making any more land, and this doesn't come up very often. So you have to jump on it before, at least see if it's something you don't want to look later and say we should have done something. So
Sure.
that's.
I would
Take
think
also-
that this won't start until the third quarter of next year. When the social distancing and all that is going to be a big problem. Hopefully
Well,
everybody is vaccinated before they can enter that area.
The one thing, let me just, in terms of timing, yes, it's absolutely, if the town moves forward, we have a series of public hearings that we would have to do on bonding. It would probably be close to summer before we could, I said to the family, we're probably talking like a April, May real estate closing, probably if everything lined up perfectly for us to be able to do that. One of the things that they have said is, while Mr. Kellogg is still with us, that if this all does work out and we're able to move forward in this direction, they would love to see us at least do some sort of a ribbon cutting, even if it's not officially the way everything wants to be while he's still with us, and obviously everybody involved with that. So.
Hey, Doug, just two points. One is, like Dick said, thanks for hosting, and you also, Kathy. Secondly, what you mentioned before about this all starting to become public meeting discussions versus discussions like this. I mean, I guess I would just request that we try to keep it at this level until we have a little more of a plan so that we don't present something to the public that we then have to unsell to the public. So however possible that is, I guess I would hope that we could do that.
So
Would you file for your eyes only?
So obviously we try to be an extremely transparent town. I hope if you don't, let me put a plug in for the newsletter. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, please do that because we love to communicate with our residents. But we have, in addition to our desire to be extremely transparent, we also have all kinds of rules and processes that we have to follow. One of the things that we're also trying to make this all work is the family is also wanting to move forward in a pretty expeditious manner also. Mm-hmm. So in order for us to be able to start to set public hearings, we have to do resolutions that really does start to make this a little bit public. So not to this level of detail in all the particulars that we've talked about here today, but at least that we're exploring, looking at this parcel. It's obviously for sale. I mean, that's public knowledge anyway. And that we would then need to set a public hearing. And so our January meeting date is January the 11th. And so we would be looking to have our first public hearing relative, again, it doesn't have to be this level of detail, just more of, hey, this is kind of what we're looking at so that the family knows that we're serious also. Because that's one of the things, the family is also very concerned about the timing of dealing with the town versus, you know, a private developer.
So what are you going to call it?
The family has requested that the name, and actually I'm waiting for a piece of paper specifically from the family, but the family is specifically requesting that Kellogg be included in the name. Originally, they had picked out the name, and I tried to get them to instead just put the request in that Kellogg be included in the name, because I think we need to do our due diligence also. Tichenor Point obviously has a very specific, I think we also need to have a conversation with the Seneca Nation, and we need to come up, we need to brainstorm some different things about maybe how all of that stuff can be honored.
Okay.
In closing, Doug, if the appraisals come in at 3 million and the Kellogg's are still itchy to get their money, it may go to an auction. And I'd like you to review how Jim Holden and Earl Lacrosse finagled the last look at that auction for Onondaga as a good model to try to pull off.
Sure. Okay. We'll do. Absolutely will do. And that is something that I have kind of planted the seed as a just in case backup plan, but hopefully it doesn't come to that, but we'll see. So, and you're right. And that's exactly that it was interesting the way that all came about with Onondaga.
Mhm.
It would be interesting to see who purchased that property on Skaneateles, out in Skaneateles, to see, was it a developer or an individual? You know, we're guessing as to what's, you know, attractive to builders, but because the interest rates are low for us, they're also low for them, and they can, you know, buy this property for a low price and sell it at a different price. So, I don't know how many developers are out there knocking down the door. We've been told that there's a lot of interest in it, but it's hard to know in a vacuum. This is because it's unique. I mean, I'm kind of I like to watch real estate and see what's going on, but I have no frame of reference for this.
Yeah, this is the information on that that other parcel there that they provided. So here's it was listed at 5675. It sold for 5.6 at 4.8 acres. Similar in that regard. So, and that just closed.
How much lake frontage there?
297 feet.
297 feet. What is this?
I do know it says to be built. It looks like they're looking to just put initially one house on there. I don't, like I'm saying, I don't know if it's could be approved for more, what their
Right.
limitations are on that. See, it says to be built, one of a kind village waterfront building lot. So,
With a boathouse and 2 outbuildings, you know.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Is there any activity on Arnold Johnson's property?
We have a public hearing actually on Monday relative to some ongoing conversations that we've had about that property. That property is owned by RSM. And so we do have a public hearing on that parcel this coming Monday night, the 21st.
What are you thinking?
Just so that you, here, let me just kind of zoom in for that. So what we've done with that, so that is 485 feet of lake frontage. And that parcel, what we did was we have a option on that parcel that basically, going back to the previous conversation, that you know, we would have the option over the next 2 years to execute that option if we wanted to move forward with the acquisition of that land. You know, 485 feet of lake frontage, that, to the best of my knowledge, is the single largest, longest linear feet of lake frontage that is left undeveloped in the town of Canandaigua on Canandaigua Lake. With I believe the Cook property on West Lake Boulevard is second. I believe Tichenor Point is third, and then I believe it's Onondaga after that. There's very few parcels that are that big in terms of the linear footage of Canandaigua Lake. This parcel is very steep, especially on this portion here. There could be some public access down on this southernmost portion, but this is very, very steep here. And recently some opportunities have come up that we want to have some ongoing conversations that may involve the DEC and some what they call source water protection. So there's a variety of different things turning on that parcel, but we want to again just start to have a conversation about, and that's why we had originally set the public hearing and get the public's input.
Have you got a thought about a park on the Cook property?
On the Cook property, they recently sold their property to a private developer.
Okay.
Do you know how much that went for by any chance?
I don't off the top of my head. I don't. We have the information. I just don't know what it was off the top of my head.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Now you can put it in the newsletter.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you all for taking the time to chat with us. We really appreciate the opportunity to interact with you.
Well, thank
Thank you.
Oh, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
the insight to the whole thing. So thank you
And
again.
please feel free to reach out anytime. If I can't answer it, I'll try to find out for you as well.
Okay.
All right.
Nice to
All right.
get to know you a little bit, Kathy. We know
That's
Doug.
nice. Anytime.
I'll send you a link so that you have it to this too. We did record this just so you have it. If you want to go back and you can't sleep tonight and you want to rewatch it, you're welcome to. So,
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
all right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.